The lower decks of Station Keras smelled like rust, sweat, and desperation. Flickering lights cast shadows on metal walls covered in grime that hadn't been cleaned in years. This wasn't the shiny part of the station where wealthy traders conducted business. This was where the forgotten people existed, day by day, struggling just to survive. Every evening, crowds gathered in what used to be a cargo bay. Now it served a different purpose. The owners had cleared out the center, put up makeshift barriers, and turned it into an arena. They called it entertainment. The people forced to participate called it something else entirely. Lyra pressed herself against the cold wall, watching the current fight end. A Krovik Labor had just beaten a Zyarn scrapper unconscious. The prize sat on a table near the announcer, 2 protein bars and a bottle of clean water. The Krovik grabbed his winnings and stumbled away, blood dripping from a gash above his eye. Nobody offered to help him. Everyone was too worried about their own survival. She'd been on this station for 93 days. Lyra kept count by scratching marks into the wall of the tiny storage closet she shared with 4 others. Her family's trading ship had docked here for what should have been routine refueling. Then the station authorities claimed they found irregularities in their cargo manifest. Lies, all of it. But her family couldn't pay the massive fine, so the station seized their ship. Her parents and brother were locked in detention. She was left to fend for herself because, at 16 cycles old, she was considered an adult by station law. The Velen species wasn't built for fighting. Back home, her people were artists, musicians, traders. They had hollow bones to make movement easier, and their skin produced bioluminescent patterns that reflected their emotions. Right now, Lyra's markings were dim, almost gray. Fear did that. Next fight. The announcer's voice boomed through crackling speakers. Lyra of Velas versus Grunt the Hammer. Her stomach dropped. She'd fought 3 times before, always against others as desperate and weak as herself. But Grunt? Everyone knew Grunt. The Krovik stood nearly 7 feet tall, with arms thick as support beams. They called him the Hammer because that's what his fists felt like. Lyra's hands trembled as she walked toward the arena. The crowd pressed close to the barriers, shouting and placing bets. Most were betting on how quickly she'd go down. A few were betting on whether she'd survive at all. The prize tonight was better than usual, a full loaf of protein bread. That could last her 3 days if she rationed carefully. 3 days without having to fight again. 3 days to heal the bruises covering her ribs from the last match. Grunt was already in the arena, cracking his knuckles and grinning. He had nothing against her personally. This was just business. Survival. The same reason she was here. The announcer raised his hand. Fight. Lyra dove right as Grunt's fist slammed into the space where her head had been. The crowd roared. She rolled, came up running, using her speed because that was all she had. Grunt was strong but slow. If she could tire him out, maybe she had a chance. His next swing caught her shoulder, spinning her around and sending pain shooting down her arm. She bit back a scream. Showing pain only excited the crowd more. For 8 brutal minutes, Lyra danced around Grunt's attacks. She landed quick jabs to his ribs, his neck, anywhere she could reach, but it was like hitting stone. Her lungs burned. Her legs felt like they might give out. One of Grunt's punches grazed her cheek, and she tasted blood. Then Grunt made a mistake. He overextended on a wild swing, his breathing heavy and labored. Lyra saw her opening. She ducked under his arm and drove her elbow into the back of his knee with everything she had left. The big Krovik went down hard. The crowd's roar changed tone, surprise, excitement, disbelief. Grunt tried to get up, but his leg buckled. He stayed down, gasping for air, one hand raised in surrender. Winner, Lyra of Velas. She could barely believe it. The announcer shoved the bread into her hands, and she clutched it against her chest, protecting it like it was made of diamonds. The crowd was already losing interest, looking toward the next fight. Lyra limped back to her corner of the lower deck, her prize secure. Other desperate faces watched her with hollow eyes. Everyone was hungry. Everyone was desperate. But this bread was hers. She'd bled for it. That's when she noticed him. A human, standing at the edge of the crowd, wasn't cheering or betting. He just stood there, his face twisted with something Lyra hadn't seen in months, disgust. Not at her or the fighters, but at the whole situation. At the system that made people fight for food. Their eyes met for just a moment. Then he turned and walked away, his hands shoved deep in his jacket pockets. Lyra didn't know it yet, but that brief moment of eye contact would change everything. Because Jake Morrison wasn't the type of man who could see injustice and just walk away. He'd tried that before, back on Earth, and it had haunted him ever since. The station's enforcers were already circulating through the crowd, collecting their cut from the betting pools. They wore shock batons on their belts and had the casual cruelty of people who'd never been held accountable for anything. One of them, a scarred Voxen everyone called Grell, watched the proceedings with cold calculation. The fights weren't just entertainment. They were control. Keep people desperate, and they'd never organize. Never rebel. Never question who was really in charge. Lyra found her storage closet and locked the flimsy door. She broke off a small piece of bread, letting it dissolve slowly on her tongue. It tasted like survival. Like maybe she could make it one more day. Outside her door, the station hummed with activity. Merchants closing shops, workers changing shifts, the eternal background noise of life continuing. Somewhere above, in the clean, bright upper decks, people were eating real meals and sleeping in actual beds. They probably didn't even know the fighting pits existed. Or maybe they did and just didn't care. Lyra's bioluminescent markings flickered weakly in the darkness. Tomorrow she'd have to find water. Tomorrow she'd have to avoid the enforcers who sometimes grabbed young Velans for questioning. Tomorrow she'd have to survive. But tonight, she had bread. And somewhere on this horrible station, a human had looked at her like she mattered. Like what was happening here was wrong. She didn't dare hope it meant anything. Hope was dangerous. Hope got you hurt. Still, as she drifted into exhausted sleep, clutching her bread, she couldn't quite forget the look in that human's eyes. Jake couldn't sleep. He'd returned to his ship hours ago, but every time he closed his eyes, he saw that girl clutching the bread like it was the most precious thing in the universe. Maybe on this station, it was. The Horizon Runner wasn't much to look at, a mid-sized freighter that had seen better days, but it was home. Jake had bought it with his discharge bonus after leaving Earth's Merchant Marine. That was 8 years ago, and he'd been hauling cargo across the outer sectors ever since, trying to outrun memories that followed him anyway. His crew was small. Beth handled engineering and had a gift for keeping the old ship running with duct tape and prayers. Danny managed navigation and communications, young but sharp. They were good people. The kind who didn't ask too many questions about why Jake sometimes took jobs that paid less but felt more right. "You okay, boss?" Beth found him in the cargo hold, supposedly checking inventory but mostly just staring at crates. "Yeah. Fine. You're a terrible liar." She leaned against a support beam, arms crossed. "What did you see down there?" Jake set down his datapad. "They're making people fight for food, Beth. Kids, barely adults. I watched this girl, couldn't weigh more than 90 pounds, go up against someone twice her size. For one loaf of bread." Beth's expression hardened. She'd done relief work on Earth after the water wars, had seen humanity at its worst and best. Station authorities know. Station authorities are running it. Taking bets, collecting fees. It's all legal here, technically. Station law is whatever those thugs say it is. "So what are you thinking?" Jake grabbed his backpack from a storage locker. "I'm thinking I've got 3 weeks of rations in here that I don't need." Beth smiled. "Want company?" "Better if I go alone. Less threatening." He loaded up the pack, sealed meal pouches, military-grade nutrition bars, dried fruit, water purification tablets, even some medical supplies. His crew wouldn't miss it. They could resupply at the next station. Finding Lyra wasn't hard. The lower deck residents all huddled in the same areas, trying to stay invisible. She was in a corridor near the old maintenance sector, sitting with her back against the wall, that loaf of bread hidden inside her jacket. When she saw him approaching, her whole body tensed. Her skin markings flared bright orange, fear, he guessed. She pulled the bread closer, ready to run or fight. Jake stopped several feet away, keeping his hands visible. "Hey. I'm not here to take anything." She didn't understand English, but his tone must have been clear enough. Still, she watched him with wide eyes, ready to bolt. Slowly, deliberately, Jake unslung his backpack and set it on the ground. Then he opened it, pulling out the meal pouches one by one and setting them in front of her. Nutrition bars. Dried fruit. Water bottles. He kept his movements slow, non-threatening. Lyra stared at the growing pile like she was seeing a hallucination. Her markings shifted to pale blue, confusion, maybe disbelief. Jake pulled out the last items, the med kit and water purification tablets, and set them down. Then he stood up, shouldered the empty pack, and walked away without a word. Behind him, he heard a small, choked sound. Not quite crying. Something between shock and relief. He didn't look back. The walk back to his ship took 20 minutes, and Jake felt lighter despite the empty pack. His dad used to say that doing the right thing wasn't always easy, but it was always simple. You saw someone hurting, you helped. That's all there was to it. By the time he reached the Horizon Runner's docking bay, word had already started spreading. That's how tight-knit communities worked. News traveled fast, especially unusual news. A group of lower-deck residents watched him from a distance. None approached, but their eyes followed him with something that looked like cautious hope. Danny met him at the airlock. "Boss, people are talking about you down there. Saying you gave away a bunch of supplies to some Velen girl. That a problem?" "Depends." Station security types were asking questions at the docking office. Wanted to know what our business here was, how long we're staying. "Let them ask. We're not doing anything illegal." "No, but we're doing something they don't like." These stations run on desperation. You start helping people for free, it messes with their system. Jake headed for the ship's small galley and poured himself coffee that had been sitting too long and tasted like motor oil. Then their system needs messing with. The next morning, Jake went back to the lower decks with another pack of supplies. Not as much this time, he couldn't empty his ship's stores, but enough. He found Lyra in the same area, and this time she didn't run. She just watched him approach with those luminescent markings shifting through colors he couldn't interpret. He set down a smaller bundle, more food, and a handheld translator device he'd dug out of storage. She picked up the translator cautiously, turned it on. The device scanned her for a moment, calibrating. "Why?" Her voice came through the translator, tinny but clear. "Why help me?" Jake crouched down to her level. "Because someone should. Because making people fight for food is wrong. That's simple enough." "Nothing is simple here." "Maybe it should be." Over the next few days, Jake kept returning. Not always with supplies, he couldn't sustain that, but with information. He taught Lyra how to use the purification tablets, showed her which recycler stations leaked edible waste, explained basic first aid using the med kit. She, in turn, became his guide to the lower deck's hidden social structure. She explained how the fighting pits worked, who ran them, how the whole system fed into the station's black market economy. "The boss is Grell," she told him through the translator. "Voxen. He controls security, runs the fights, takes cuts from everything. People who cause trouble disappear." "Disappear how?" "Just, gone. Airlocked, maybe. Sold to labor ships. Nobody knows. Nobody asks." Other people started approaching Jake during his visits. Not begging, exactly, but watching. Testing. A million mechanic named Trev asked if Jake needed any repairs done. Cheap, good work. Jake hired him to tune up the Horizon Runner's secondary thrusters, paid him triple the asking price. Trev used that money to buy tools, then started offering free repairs to other lower deck residents. A human merchant named Violet, who'd been stuck on the station for years after her ship was impounded, started selling food at cost instead of the usual markup. She couldn't give it away, she needed to survive too, but she stopped gouging desperate people. Small acts of kindness began spreading like ripples in water. Someone fixed a broken water line. Someone else shared their meal. The culture of pure survival started showing cracks, letting in tiny rays of something that looked almost like community. But not everyone was happy about it. Grell noticed. Of course he noticed. Control required desperation, and hope was desperation's enemy. He sent one of his enforcers to deliver a message, an invitation to his office, phrased politely but everyone knew what it really meant. Beth wanted to come along. Jake refused. This meeting needed to look like cooperation, not confrontation. Grell's office was in the mid-decks, nicer than anything below but still grungy by upper-deck standards. The Voxen sat behind a desk that was probably stolen, his scaled face unreadable. "Captain Morrison. Thank you for coming. Didn't realize I had a choice." "Everyone has choices." Grell's smile showed too many teeth. "I've been hearing interesting things about you. Charitable work in the lower decks. Very noble. Just being neighborly." "Yes, well. The thing is, your neighborly activities are disrupting station commerce. The fights, the food economy, the labor market, these systems exist for a reason. They maintain order. They maintain suffering. That's a matter of perspective." Grell leaned forward. "I'm going to give you some friendly advice, Captain. Finish your repairs and leave. Continue your charitable work elsewhere. If you stay and keep disrupting things, well, accidents happen on stations like this. Airlocks malfunction. Ships develop critical failures during departure. Would hate for anything to happen to that lovely vessel of yours. Jake met his eyes. Message received. I'm glad we understand each other. Jake left the office, his jaw clenched. Beth and Danny were waiting at the ship. What did he say? Beth asked. Threatened us. Told us to leave. So we're leaving? Jake looked toward the lower decks, thought about Lyra and Trev and Violet and all the others just trying to survive. Not yet, he said. We've got more repairs to do. Might take a while. Beth grinned. Thought you might say that. I'll make sure those repairs take extra long. That night, Lyra found Jake near the docking bays. Her markings were pale yellow, gratitude, he'd learned. The others are talking, she said through the translator. Saying maybe things can change. Because of you. Not because of me. Because people decided to help each other. But you started it. Jake shook his head. I just reminded people what they already knew. That we're better than this. What he didn't tell her was that Grell's threat had made up his mind. He wasn't just going to help anymore. He was going to break this whole rotten system wide open. He just needed to figure out how. The change started small, almost invisible at first. But on a station where nothing ever changed, even small things got noticed. Violet's food stall became the first obvious sign. She'd been selling at cost for 3 days now, and word had spread. Lines formed at her tiny shop in the lower market, people whispering nervously like they expected it to be a trap. But it wasn't. She just smiled tiredly and handed over real food at prices people could actually afford. Jake stopped by on his 4th day on the station. Violet was restocking shelves with trembling hands, glancing over her shoulder every few minutes. You doing okay? He asked. She laughed, but it sounded shaky. Define okay. I'm making a quarter of what I used to make. Grell's enforcers have been by twice asking questions, and I can't sleep because I keep thinking they'll trash my shop overnight. Why keep doing it then? Violet paused, holding a can of processed vegetables. You know what I realized? I've been on this station for 6 years. 6 years of watching people starve while I made profit off their desperation. I could blame the system, blame Grell, blame anyone. But at the end of the day, I was part of it. She set the can down carefully. Your friend, that Velen girl, Lyra? She came by yesterday. Bought food with actual money she'd saved, first time in months she didn't have to fight for it. The way she looked at that food. Violet's eyes got wet. I don't want to be the person who makes kids fight for bread anymore. Jake helped her finish restocking. When he left, there were more people in line than before. Trev the mechanic was causing his own kind of trouble. He'd set up a makeshift workshop in an abandoned storage bay and was repairing things for free or for trade. Water filters, heating units, even personal data pads, anything broken, he'd fix it. The impact was bigger than it seemed. A working water filter meant not buying overpriced clean water from station vendors. A heating unit meant not freezing in the cold lower decks. These weren't just repairs. They were liberation, one fixed appliance at a time. Jake found him elbow deep in some kind of circulation pump, cursing creatively. This thing's been broken for 2 years, Trev said without looking up. 2 years these people have been living without proper air circulation. You know what that does to millions? We need specific oxygen ratios or we get sick. This family's been sick for 2 years because they couldn't afford the 300 credit repair fee. Can you fix it? Already did. Just calibrating now. Trev wiped grease on his pants. You started something here, human. People are remembering they don't have to just accept things. But it wasn't just Violet and Trev. A Vizian woman named Kessa, who'd been hoarding water rations, started sharing her supply. A group of laborists began pooling their earnings to help others pay off bogus fines. Even children got involved, teaching each other to read using a single battered datapad someone had repaired. Lyra became Jake's unofficial guide and translator. Her galactic common was improving rapidly. Necessity was a harsh but effective teacher. She led him through the lower deck's maze of corridors, introducing him to people who needed help, explaining the unwritten rules that govern life down here. See that marking on the wall? She pointed to a scratched symbol near a junction. That means enforcers patrol this area twice per shift. This one, she indicated a different mark, means there's a camera. We know where all of them are. How long have you been mapping this stuff? Since I got here. Everyone does it. Survival. They turned a corner and nearly walked into a group of young Kroviks, 3 of them, all looking hungry and angry. The leader stepped forward, blocking their path. That's the human, he growled. The one giving away free stuff. Jake tensed, but Lyra put a hand on his arm. She spoke rapidly in a language the translator couldn't catch, gestured at Jake, at the corridor, at the Kroviks themselves. The tone was heated but not hostile. An argument, not a threat. Finally, the leader grunted and stepped aside. Tell him he's making things complicated. Grell's cracking down. More patrols, more fines, more fights. It's getting worse before it gets better. Tell him myself, Jake said. I understand you're angry. But getting worse first might be the only way to make it better permanently. Systems don't change easy. They fight back. The Krovik studied him. You planning something? Maybe. You interested in helping? Depends what you're offering. Freedom from this place. All of you. Real freedom, not just surviving another day. The Krovik snorted. Big words. Let's see if you can back them up. But he didn't sound entirely skeptical anymore. The small rebellions continued spreading. Someone started an underground school, teaching children things beyond basic survival. Someone else organized a crude medical clinic, pooling knowledge and supplies. These weren't coordinated efforts, there was no grand plan. Just people deciding, one by one, that maybe they didn't have to live like this. But Grell noticed. Of course he noticed. The Enforcer's presence tripled in the lower decks. They conducted random searches, confiscated supplies they claimed were stolen, arrested people on invented charges. The fighting pits increased their schedule, now twice daily instead of once. The prizes got smaller, the matches more brutal. It was retaliation, pure and simple. Grell was squeezing harder, trying to crush the hope before it could take root. Jake watched a fight one evening, his stomach churning. A young Vizian against a veteran Million, both half-starved, both desperate. The Vizian won but couldn't even celebrate, he just grabbed his prize, 2 protein bars, and limped away bleeding. Beth found Jake afterwards. Boss, we need to talk. Danny intercepted some security chatter. Grell's planning something. He mentioned your name specifically. What kind of something? Didn't get details, but it sounded bad. They're going to make an example. Back at the ship, Jake's crew gathered in the galley. Danny pulled up station schematics on a datapad, pointing out security camera locations, patrol routes, critical systems. If we're doing this, we need a plan, Danny said. Can't just wing it against someone like Grell. Doing what exactly? Jake asked. What's the endgame here? Beth leaned back. You want my honest opinion? We start documenting everything. Every illegal operation, every bogus fine, every instance of coercion. Build a case and send it to the Galactic Trade Commission. They have authority over stations like this. That'll take weeks. Maybe months. So we work fast. I've got recording equipment. Danny can hack into their systems, pull financial records. We get evidence, lots of it, then we leverage it. Leverage it how? Public exposure. Send it everywhere, GTC, news networks, competitor stations. Grell's operation only works if nobody with real authority is paying attention. We make them pay attention. It was risky. If Grell caught them gathering evidence, there wouldn't be threats anymore. Just action. Fatal action. Jake looked at his crew. This isn't your fight. You two can leave anytime. I'll cover your shares, give you bonuses even. No hard feelings. Beth snorted. Please. I didn't join your crew to play it safe. Danny nodded. Besides, someone's got to keep you from doing something stupidly heroic and getting yourself killed. Despite everything, Jake smiled. All right then. We do this smart. Beth, start documenting. Danny, see what you can pull from their systems without triggering alarms. I'll keep doing what I'm doing, staying visible, keeping their attention on me. Over the next week, they worked systematically. Beth concealed tiny cameras in the lower decks, capturing footage of the fights, the exploitation, the brutal enforcement. Danny wormed his way into the station's financial systems, finding evidence of embezzlement, illegal weapons trading, even connections to slave labor operations. Meanwhile, Jake kept his routine, visiting the lower decks, helping where he could, staying visible. Let Grell think he was just a bleeding heart human who couldn't help himself. Let him underestimate what was really happening. Lyra helped more than anyone. She knew people, knew secrets, knew where bodies were buried, sometimes literally. She guided Beth to the right locations, introduced Danny to a station tech who could provide system access codes, coordinated with the growing network of lower-deck residents who were ready for change. "Why are you doing this?" Jake asked her one evening. They were sitting in his ship's cargo hold, reviewing footage Beth had captured. "You could keep your head down, survive until you can leave. Why risk yourself?" Lyra's markings shifted to deep purple, determination, he'd learned. "Because I don't want to just survive anymore. I want to live. And because you reminded me that someone has to say enough. Might as well be us." The footage on the datapad showed a fight from that afternoon. A child, couldn't be more than 14, fighting an adult twice her size for a single meal. The child lost. Badly. Jake's hands clenched. "We're running out of time. People are getting hurt while we gather evidence." "Evidence doesn't matter if we're dead," Lyra said quietly. "Grell's planning something big. Everyone can feel it. The enforcers are asking about you constantly. Checking manifests, watching your ship. Let them watch. We're almost done." What Jake didn't know was that Grell wasn't just watching anymore. He'd moved past threats and surveillance. He was ready to send a message that even naive, idealistic humans couldn't ignore. And that message would involve Lyra, the fighting pits, and a match that was designed to break hope once and for all. The announcement came without warning, blasted through every speaker in the lower decks at maximum volume. "Special event tonight. A fight to the death. Winner takes 1 month of full rations, medical care, and debt forgiveness. Lyra of Velas versus Crane the Breaker. Betting opens in 1 hour." Jake was in the lower market when he heard it, helping Violet move supplies. The words hit him like a physical blow. Around him, the market went silent. Everyone knew what this meant. Lyra was in the crowd, frozen in place. Her skin markings flashed between colors so rapidly they almost strobed, fear, anger, disbelief, all mixing together. People backed away from her, like death had already marked her. Crane the Breaker wasn't just big. He was a professional pit fighter before coming to the station, a Droken whose species was literally bred for combat over generations. 7 feet tall, covered in natural armor plating, with fists that could punch through steel. He'd killed 3 opponents in sanctioned matches before ending up here. In the lower deck fights, he'd never lost. Not once. This wasn't a fight. It was an execution. Jake pushed through the crowd toward Lyra. She saw him coming and shook her head violently, backing away. "No. Don't. This is because of you. Because of your help. He's making an example." The translator made her voice sound flat, but Jake could hear the terror underneath. "We're getting you out of here. Right now. My ship. They'll kill you. Kill your crew. They're watching everything." She was shaking. "I knew this would happen. Hope is dangerous here. Hope gets people killed." Violet grabbed Jake's arm. "She's right. Grell's enforcers are everywhere. 3 of them followed you here. They're waiting for you to try something." Jake looked around. Sure enough, there were enforcers positioned at every exit, trying to look casual but clearly alert. This whole thing was a trap with multiple purposes: eliminate Lyra, break the growing resistance, and force Jake to either watch or try to intervene and get killed himself. "There has to be another way," Jake said. "There isn't." Lyra's markings had gone almost white, resignation. "I'll fight. Maybe I'll get lucky." "You won't. Nobody gets lucky against Crane." "Then I'll die. At least it'll be over." Jake wanted to punch something. Instead, he forced himself to think. There were always options. His dad used to say that surrender was a choice, not an inevitability. You just had to see past the obvious moves. He headed back to his ship, enforcers trailing behind him like shadows. Beth and Danny were in the cargo hold, already monitoring the situation through the security feeds they'd tapped into. "We saw the announcement," Beth said. "Boss, this is bad. Really bad. Tell me you've got good news about evidence gathering." "We've got enough. Financial records, video footage, witness testimony, everything we need to bury Grell. But it doesn't matter if we're all dead before we can transmit it." Danny pulled up schematics of the fighting arena. "I've been thinking. The place has 6 exits, all of which will be guarded. Life support is controlled from central ops. Communications are monitored. Even if we could get Lyra out, they'd lock down the station before we could leave." Jake stared at the schematics, his mind racing. Then something clicked. "What if we don't run?" "Come again?" "They're expecting us to either do nothing or try to rescue her. What if we do something completely different?" Jake turned to his crew. "What if I fight instead?" Beth's eyes went wide. "Jake, no. Hear me out. The fights are supposed to be voluntary, right? Anyone can register. What if I register to fight Crane? That's suicide. You're not a trained fighter. Neither is Lyra, and she's got even less chance than me. At least I've got size and combat experience. Military training counts for something. Danny was already checking the station's fight regulations on his datapad. Actually, there's nothing saying he can't. The rules are pretty open. Anyone can challenge, anyone can register. They'd probably love it. Human versus Droken would draw a huge crowd. More betting. This is insane, Beth said. Even if you somehow survive, then what? You're still stuck here with Grell wanting you dead. Jake smiled grimly. Then we make sure we don't just survive. We win. And not just the fight. Over the next 2 hours, they worked frantically. Danny compiled every piece of evidence they gathered into encrypted packages, ready to transmit to multiple destinations simultaneously. Beth rigged the Deadman's switch. If anything happened to them, the evidence would auto-transmit. They documented everything, including video statements explaining the situation. Insurance, Beth called it. Grell makes a move against us, he goes down too. Jake went to register for the fight. The betting house was in a grimy office near the arena, run by one of Grell's lieutenants, a nervous Thesian who clearly hadn't expected this. You want to fight Crane? The human wants to fight Crane. He laughed, then stopped when he saw Jake wasn't joking. You understand this is to the death, yes? No surrender, no mercy. I understand. And you understand Crane has never lost? Yep. The Thesian shrugged and processed the registration. Your funeral. Literally. Fights in 4 hours. Don't be late. Word spread faster than fire in an oxygen leak. The human was fighting Crane. The crazy, food-giving, troublemaking human had registered for a death match. The betting houses were going insane. Odds were 50-1 against Jake, and money was pouring in. Lyra found Jake in his ship's gym, where he was stretching and reviewing everything he remembered from his military hand-to-hand training. It wasn't much. He'd been a cargo specialist, not special forces. You can't do this, she said, her markings pale blue with anguish. This is my fight. My punishment. Why would you? Because it's not about punishment. It's about control. Grell wants to break everyone's spirit by killing you. Killing anyone who represents hope. If I fight instead, at least we choose our own terms. You'll die. Maybe. Probably. But here's the thing, I'm going to make sure it matters either way. Win or lose, this ends tonight. The whole rotten system. How? Jake explained the plan. The evidence, the Deadman's switch, the simultaneous transmission to multiple authorities. Even if Grell killed him in retaliation, the truth would come out. The station would be investigated, taken over, cleaned up. We've documented everything, he said. Every illegal operation, every ounce of corruption. Once this goes public, Grell's done. The fighting pits are done. All of it. Lyra's markings shifted through several colors. And if Grell just kills all of us before the transmission goes out? He can't. Danny's got it rigged to auto-send if we don't input codes every hour. Grell moves against us, the evidence goes out automatically. It's already explained in the documentation, any retaliation proves guilt. So you're betting he'll be too afraid to act. I'm betting he'll have to negotiate. And that negotiation is going to free this whole deck. Beth entered the gym. Boss, we've got movement. Grell wants a meeting. Now. Before the fight. Perfect. Let's go talk. Grell's office felt smaller this time, or maybe Jake was just angrier. The Voxen sat behind his desk, looking less smug than before. Captain Morrison. I have to admit, I didn't expect this move. Quite dramatic. I thought you'd appreciate the entertainment value. Should boost betting revenues. Indeed. But let's be honest with each other. This isn't about the fight, is it? You've been gathering information. My systems have detected intrusions. Subtle ones, but intrusions nonetheless. Jake kept his expression neutral. I don't know what you mean. Please. I'm not an idiot. You've been building a case against me. Evidence of my operations. Grell leaned forward. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to give me all that evidence. Then you're going to leave this station and never come back. Do that, and I'll let you and your crew live. I'll even let the girl live. And if I don't? Then you die in the arena, your crew has unfortunate accidents, and the Velen girl, Well, she'll wish she died in the arena. I can be very creative with punishment. Jake stood up, placed his hands on Grell's desk, and looked him straight in the eye. Here's my counteroffer. You shut down the fighting pits. Today. Right now. You forgive every bogus debt, every fake fine, every made-up charge. You let everyone who wants to leave, leave. Do that, and maybe, I don't send every piece of evidence we've gathered to the Galactic Trade Commission, to competitor stations, to every news network in 3 sectors. Grell's face went very still. You're bluffing. Am I? Want to find out? Because that evidence is queued up right now, ready to transmit. My crew has a deadman switch. Anything happens to us, it auto-sends. You think your operation survives that kind of exposure? For the first time, Grell looked uncertain. You have no proof. We have everything. Financial records showing embezzlement. Video of the fights, the coercion, the violence. Documented connections to slave traders. 6 years of corruption, all neatly compiled and annotated. Want me to start listing specifics? The silence stretched. Grell's claws tapped on his desk, a nervous rhythm. Even if you have this evidence, he said slowly, releasing it hurts everyone. The station gets shut down, investigated. Everyone suffers during that. Including your precious lower deck residents. Short-term suffering for long-term freedom. They'll take that deal. Will they? Or are you deciding for them? That hit harder than Jake wanted to admit. But he pushed forward. I'm giving them a choice. That's more than you ever did. Grell stood up, his full height impressive even for his species. You're playing a dangerous game, human. Threatening me, interfering with my station. It's not your station. It belongs to everyone here. You just convinced them otherwise. The Voxen's eyes narrowed. Fine. You want to make this interesting? Let's make it interesting. You fight Crane tonight. You somehow win, which you won't, and we'll negotiate. You lose, and this little rebellion ends with you. Either way, the fight happens. No backing out now. Too many people are watching. Jake had expected this. Deal. But the evidence still goes out if anything happens to my crew or anyone else down there. Understood. See you in the arena, Captain. I'll enjoy watching you die. As Jake left the office, his heart was pounding. He'd bought time, maybe. Created leverage, definitely. But now he actually had to fight a professional killer in front of hundreds of people. Beth was waiting outside. How'd it go? About as well as expected. We fight. If I win, we negotiate from a position of strength. If I lose, well, make sure that evidence goes out. You're not going to lose. Beth, be realistic. No. You're not going to lose because we're not letting you. Danny and I have been working on something. Come on. Back at the ship, they showed him what they'd prepared. It wasn't much, some tricks, some tactics, information about Droken physiology and fighting styles. Beth had even fabricated some lightweight armor that looked like regular clothes but might stop a killing blow or two. It's not enough to beat him, Beth admitted. But it might be enough to survive long enough to make this matter. 4 hours later, Jake stood at the arena entrance, surrounded by the largest crowd the fighting pits had ever seen. Somewhere in that crowd was Lyra, and Violet, and Trev, and all the others who dared to hope. The announcer's voice boomed, "Ladies and gentlemen. Tonight's main event. A fight to the death. The challenger, Jake Morrison, human freighter captain." The crowd roared. Some were cheering. Most were just excited for blood. And the champion, Crane the Breaker. The Droken entered from the opposite side, and Jake's heart sank. He was even bigger up close, covered in natural armor plating that looked impenetrable. His eyes were cold, professional. He'd done this before and would do it again. Jake stepped into the arena. The gates closed behind him. This was it. Win or die. Change everything or change nothing. The announcer raised his hand. Fight. Crane moved like a freight train, fast, unstoppable, terrifying. His first punch missed Jake's head by inches, close enough that the wind from it stung his face. Jake rolled sideways, came up on his feet, and immediately had to dodge again as Crane's follow-up strike cratered the metal floor where he'd been standing. The crowd was screaming, a wall of sound that made thinking difficult. Jake forced himself to focus. His military training had been years ago, and it definitely hadn't covered fighting 7-foot-tall armored aliens. But it had taught him one thing: every opponent has weaknesses. He just had to stay alive long enough to find Crane's. The Droken was all offense, pressing forward with methodical precision. Jake backpedaled, dodged, weaved. A punch caught his shoulder and spun him around, pain exploding down his arm. The hidden armor Beth had made absorbed some impact, but not enough. Another hit like that and something would break. Stay down, human. Crane's voice was surprisingly calm, almost bored. Make it quick for yourself. Jake didn't waste breath responding. He watched how Crane moved, looking for patterns. The Droken favored his right side. His armor plating was thickest on his chest and shoulders but thinner at the joints. And he was overconfident. Why wouldn't he be? He'd never lost. Another combination of punches drove Jake back against the arena wall. The crowd's roar intensified. This is what they paid to see, the human getting destroyed. Jake ducked under a strike that dented the metal wall behind him and rolled away, his ribs screaming in protest. 3 minutes in, and he was already exhausted. Crane wasn't even breathing hard. Then Jake saw Lyra in the crowd, her markings flashing desperate orange. Next to her was Violet, hands clasped over her mouth. Trev was there too, and dozens of others from the lower decks. All watching. All hoping he could do the impossible. But Jake didn't need to do the impossible. He just needed to do the unexpected. He stopped running. Crane paused, surprised. Jake stood in the center of the arena, hands at his sides, breathing hard. Then he did something that made the crowd go silent. He sat down. Just sat down cross-legged on the arena floor. What are you doing? Crane growled, confused. Not fighting, Jake said loudly, making sure his voice carried. I'm not fighting you, Crane. I'm not playing this game anymore. The crowd's confusion was palpable. This wasn't how fights worked. Someone was supposed to die. That was the rule. Jake looked up at the VIP section where Grell watched. This whole thing is wrong. Making people fight for food? For survival? We're better than this. All of us. Get up and fight, someone yelled from the crowd. No. Jake stayed seated. I came here to make a point. This system, these fights, this cruelty, it only works if we participate. If we accept it. I'm done accepting it. Grell stood up in his booth, furious. This is a sanctioned match. Fight or be disqualified. Disqualify me then. Kill me if you want. But I'm not fighting. Jake turned to Crane. And you don't have to either. You're not a monster. You're just someone trapped in the same system as everyone else. Crane looked uncertain for the first time. His fists lowered slightly. If I don't fight, they'll punish me. Take away everything. They're taking everything anyway. That's the point. We're all slowly dying here, fighting each other for scraps while they profit. Jake gestured to the crowd. Look at them. Look at what we've become. Making entertainment out of desperation. The arena was absolutely silent now. Hundreds of beings, all frozen, processing what they were seeing. Then Lyra stood up. Her small voice somehow carried in the silence. He's right. I fought 6 times. 6 times I nearly died for a loaf of bread. We shouldn't have to live like this. Violet stood next. I spent 6 years charging desperate people triple for food they needed to survive. I was part of this too. But not anymore. Trev rose. Then the young Krovik from before. Then others, scattered throughout the crowd, standing one by one. Grell's voice boomed over the speakers. Sit down. All of you. This match will continue or what? Jake interrupted. You'll punish everyone? You can't. There are too many of us. That's what you never understood, Grell. This system only works if we're divided. If we're competing against each other instead of standing together. Jake pulled out a small datapad from his pocket and held it up. This contains evidence of every illegal operation on this station. 6 years of corruption, embezzlement, trafficking, coercion, all documented. My crew is ready to transmit it to the Galactic Trade Commission, to every news network, to every competitor station in this sector. Grell's face went pale. You're bluffing. Try me. My engineer has the transmission queued. One signal from me, and your whole operation gets exposed. But I'm going to make you an offer instead. The crowd was riveting their attention between Jake and Grell now, like watching a tennis match. Shut down the fighting pits, Jake continued. Right now. Forgive all debts. Let anyone who wants to leave, leave freely. Do that, and maybe, I advocate for leniency when the authorities arrive. When the authorities arrive. Grell laughed, but it sounded forced. What authorities? Danny's voice came through Jake's comm device, loud enough for everyone to hear. The Galactic Trade Commission received our initial evidence packet 20 minutes ago. They're already en route. ETA 4 hours. That was a lie, but Grell didn't know that. Jake and his crew had sent the evidence, but typical response times were days or weeks, not hours. Still, the threat was real enough. Grell's enforcers moved toward the arena, weapons drawn. The crowd tensed. This could turn into a bloodbath fast. Stop. Crane's voice cut through the tension. The massive Droken looked at his fists, then at Jake, then at Grell. I'm done too. I'm tired of killing people who don't deserve to die. Find someone else. He walked out of the arena. Just walked out, leaving Jake sitting there. The enforcers looked to Grell for orders. The Voxen's mind was clearly racing, calculating odds. If he ordered violence now, with everyone watching, with evidence already sent, it would only make things worse for him. But if he backed down, he lost control forever. Beth's voice came through Jake's comm. Boss, we're detecting multiple ships entering the system. Big ones. Military signatures. I think someone actually came. Jake couldn't believe it. The Trade Commission had actually responded quickly? That never happened unless someone important flagged it, Danny said, reading his thoughts. Boss, when we sent that evidence, I routed it through emergency channels. Marked it as urgent humanitarian crisis. That gets attention. Screens throughout the arena suddenly lit up, all showing the same thing, official Galactic Trade Commission insignia, and a stern-looking Millian official. This is Commissioner Thane of the Galactic Trade Commission. Station Keras is now under our jurisdiction pending investigation of serious violations. All residents are instructed to remain calm. Military support is inbound. Station authorities, stand down immediately. The crowd erupted. Some cheering, some crying, some just standing in shocked silence. Grell slumped in his seat, defeated. His enforcers lowered their weapons, clearly not willing to fight GTC military forces. Jake stood up slowly, his body aching from the brief fight. Lyra rushed into the arena, her markings blazing with colors he'd never seen, joy, maybe, or relief so profound it looked like joy. You did it, she said through the translator. You actually did it. We did it. All of us. Jake looked around at the crowd. This was never about me. It was about all of you deciding you deserved better. The next few hours were chaos. GTC forces secured the station, arrested Grell and his top lieutenants, began processing complaints and documenting violations. They brought medical supplies, food, and most importantly, they brought justice. Jake spent the time helping coordinate relief efforts. His crew worked alongside lower-deck residents to identify who needed medical attention, who needed passage home, who needed protection from retaliation. Violet's food stall became a distribution center for GTC relief supplies. Trev helped repair systems the enforcers had sabotaged during the takeover. Crane, surprisingly, stayed to help with security, making sure no one tried to loot or cause chaos during the transition. 2 days later, Jake stood in the former fighting arena, now converted into a temporary command center. Commissioner Thane called him over. Captain Morrison. Your evidence was comprehensive. We'll be prosecuting multiple individuals, and this station will undergo complete restructuring. You've done good work here. Just did what anyone should have done. But most don't. Thane's expression softened. The people here speak highly of you. Several have requested you be formally commended. Not necessary. I just want to know they'll be okay. They will be. We're arranging transportation for anyone who wants to leave, offering job placement assistance, providing medical care. This station will be rebuilt properly. With oversight. Lyra found Jake near his ship, preparing for departure. Her family had been released from detention and were reuniting on their repaired ship. She was going home. I don't know how to thank you, she said. Her markings were steady now, a healthy blue-green that meant peace. You already did. You stood up when it mattered. You helped organize people. That took courage. I learned it from you. You had it all along. You survived months in this place. That strength most people never need to find. She hesitated, then hugged him quickly before running back to her family's ship. Beth and Danny joined Jake at the Horizon Runner's airlock. Where to next, boss? Danny asked. Jake looked around the station, at all the people moving freely now, without fear. At children playing instead of fighting. At families reuniting. At hope, real hope, taking root in metal corridors that had only known desperation. Wherever we're needed, he said. There are a lot of stations out there. A lot of places where people might need someone to remind them they deserve better. Beth smiled. You're planning to do this again, aren't you? Find another Keras, start another rebellion. Not a rebellion. Just a reminder that we're supposed to take care of each other. That civilization means something. As the Horizon Runner undocked and pulled away from Station Keras, Jake watched it shrink in the viewport. Lights were coming on in sections that had been dark for years. Ships were coming and going freely. The fighting pits were being torn down, the metal repurposed for housing. One station. One change. One group of people who decided enough was enough. His dad used to say that you can't fix everything, but you can fix something. And sometimes, fixing something is enough to show others they can fix things too. Jake plotted a course for the outer sectors, where stations ran with minimal oversight and maximum exploitation. Where people needed help. Ready for the next one? He asked his crew. Beth fired up the engines. Always. The Horizon Runner jumped to faster-than-light travel, disappearing into the black. Behind them, Station Keras began its long journey toward becoming what it should have been all along, a place where people could live, not just survive. And somewhere in the lower decks, former enforcers were being taught by former prisoners how to run support systems fairly. Violet was training others in ethical trading practices. Trev was establishing a real repair shop. Crane was helping organize community security, but this time protecting people instead of oppressing them. The change wouldn't be perfect. It wouldn't be easy. But it would be real. Because sometimes, all it takes is one person refusing to accept cruelty. One person sitting down and saying no more. One person reminding everyone else that they are capable of being better. And sometimes, just sometimes, that's enough to change everything.